Today we'll be looking at a piece that I've written for brass ensemble or brass choir. And when we think about brass, a lot of times we think about these big epic adventure pieces and fanfare, but there's a softer, gentler side to brass. And that's what we're going to look at today in this piece called Kindness. We'll start by looking at the instrumentation, and you'll notice that I have 3 cornets in B flat here to play the melody. And the reason I've chosen cornets is because they have a rounder, more mellow tone than a trumpet. And there's a reason for that. So if we look at a trumpet, this is something called a cylindrical bore instrument. So this pipe right here, if we trace it, for most of its length, it's all the same size. And then as we get here, the bore becomes conical and it flares out as it goes. Now, if we look at a flugelhorn, for instance, this is a conical bore instrument like the cornets. You can see that the pipe from the very beginning slightly flares as it goes, and it flares all the way as it runs to the bell. So this is called a conical bore, and that gives it a more mellow, rich sound, where the trumpet, because of its cylindrical bore, has a more focused sound, a brighter sound. So that's why I'm using the cornets for the lead here. Let's listen to these 3 cornets playing the melody. You can hear how rich and full this melody sounds being played on these 3 cornets in unison. They're playing at an optimal range where there's absolutely no stress or strain and at a lower dynamic. We also have a flugelhorn, which again is a conical bore instrument. It's even darker sounding than the cornets because it's a larger instrument. We have 4 French horns, 3 trombones and a bass trombone, a tuba, and 1 percussion player playing timpani. This grouping of instruments could be considered a brass ensemble or a brass choir. Once you get above 5 or 6 brass instruments in a typical brass quintet or sextet, you start to get into this area where you're choosing your own instrumentation to fit the piece. And that's why I've chosen these particular instruments for this piece. I originally thought maybe I would write it for a British brass band, and that has a very particular instrumentation, but it was just too large for what I wanted to do with this piece. The idea behind this piece comes from something I witnessed over 20 years ago. I was at a big chain restaurant in a mall, and it was just after 9/11, so everybody was kind of on edge. And my wife and I were sitting at the counter. There were some young people behind the counter. A young woman came up and took our order. It was very nice. And there was also a side entrance to this restaurant. And a man came through there, and he was swearing profusely, and he was ticking. So it became clear that he had a pretty severe form of Tourette's syndrome. One of the young women behind the counter approached the man and started to talk with him to take his order and just treated him exactly the way she had treated us. She was talking to him in this very kind and calm manner, even though he was saying some pretty harsh things to her. And it must have taken a lot of bravery for him to come into this restaurant and be in public like this with this, people looking at him, and especially at this time. And this woman just treated him with such dignity and kindness. And it really gave me hope for humanity, the way they interacted with each other. So I wanted to write this piece based on that. Many times we think about brass as being this big, heroic, bombastic type of instrumentation. But here I'm using it to pay homage to that event. So, let's take a listen to the piece, and then we'll come back and we'll break it down. Let's take a look at some of the harmonic structure and the voicings that I'm using in the brass. In this opening accompaniment figure, you'll notice that all of our players are also playing in a very comfortable range and at a low dynamic level, so there's no stress or strain. It should blend very nicely with our melody. We have an F pedal in the bass trombone, and we start with this B flat major triad in second inversion. I'm just going to play this on the piano so you can hear those first couple measures. The thing I find very interesting about this is this second voicing right here. It's an F major 7 chord, but there's no third in that chord, so it's just the root, the 5th, and the 7th. And I think this sounds especially nice in the brass. Let's just play it both ways, with the major third in there and without the major third. So I'm just going to play those first couple beats there. That's the way it is. Now let's play it with the major third in there. It just softens it too much to me, as opposed to this. That A, adding that A in, sounds like this. And while I think that would be wonderful for a lot of pieces of music, to me, leaving that third out just really works there, especially in the brass. Let's listen to it with just the brass accompaniment playing these couple measures. Let's continue looking at the harmony by tracing this F pedal in the bass trombone. So that F pedal is supporting chords above it, and it's a chord tone in those chords. So we have an F pedal with a B flat major sound above it. We have the F pedal with that F major 7 sound above it without the third in it. We have a F minor 7 sound above the F pedal. We have a D flat major sound above the F pedal. And in all those cases, that F pedal is either the root, the third, or the 5th of the chord, until we get here. Here we have this chord, a G flat major 7 with the F pedal beneath it. Now that's still a chord tone, it's the major 7, the F pedal, but here there's more dissonance being created. We have this flat 9 between the F pedal and the root of the chord, and we're starting to build dissonance as we go. Then continuing on through these next two measures, the dissonance just continues to grow, and once we hit this D, it's at its peak. Now I really want to avoid naming this chord here. We could come up with some sort of name for it, but what I've really tried to do here was just really curate an exact amount of dissonance that I was after. And this dissonance, though it can become quieted, is always there, and you can see how that relates to the story. We do have this decrescendo here, and it's answered by this solo line here, this solo voice that continues on with a very consonant melody. And now the dissonance of this chord is quieted further by this consonant melody until we finally land on this F major triad. And there's a moment of rest here. But that rest doesn't last for very long because we move a tritone away to this B major sound. And that B major sound is slightly softened by holding the F note, our root note from the F major chord, into this voicing. So it lingers into that B major sound. It's a sharp 11 on the chord, so it helps to soften this move a little bit. Let's listen to all of this and how this tension grows, how we decrescendo here, this solo voice, this resting moment, and then this move to B major. And I'll start back here on this measure. I hope this gives you a good look at the approach that I took to writing this piece and using brass in this softer and gentler way. This piece has almost a hymn-like quality to it, paying homage to this moment in my life that has a lot of meaning to me. If you get a chance to write a piece of music that has a lot of meaning to you, I think that comes through in shows and will have meaning for others too. Be kind to one another. Let's listen to this piece one more time, and I'll see you all next time.